Okay, I think we're live. Yeah, we're live. All right, my Jiu Jitsu nerds. Today's special guest, you know him from probably Instagram, YouTube, the Matt Made Show. You've probably seen many of his recommended moves and tricks for Jiu Jitsu. The one, the only Kenny Kim. How are you, sir, today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me here today.
Thank you for coming back on. We had this show scheduled a while ago, and seems like my mic screwed up the whole show, so that's bad on me. But thank you, Kenny, for coming back again.
My pleasure. It happens. But I'd love to have an opportunity to tell, some of my story and really what I'm an advocate of martial arts and jujitsu. So it's a perfect opportunity for me to do that. So I'm happy to be here.
I'm awesome that you're here. I'm awesome to hear this story because before we go talk about how you started your academy and all this Instagram and all this stuff in your platform, I want to know more about you and talk about a little bit CGI, ADCC, beef or whatever it's called. Talk about in the news right now. So
hmm
Kenny, let's start. How did you start martial arts? Where did it all begin?
Well, my martial arts career started when I was at a very young age. Probably I was 3 or 4 years old. My
Mm,
father got me into Taekwondo when I was young.
okay.
And growing up, that was the only thing that I did. Like I didn't play. Our family wasn't. We weren't well off, and they didn't. My parents are immigrants, so we didn't. They didn't have the time or the means to get me into after school programs like have kids nowadays, right? Baseball,
Mm,
basketball, soccer, none of this stuff. So only thing that I really had was martial arts, which was taekwondo, and I would have people he would have people actually come pick me up because they work 2, 3 jobs, and so that was basically the only thing that I done from a very young age all the way up until I was late teens, early 20s,
mhm.
but yeah, I mean that was my life. I went to school and basically that's all I did. So I immersed myself into training.
All right. Was like martial arts your vision, like for growing up, or was it there's a plan
Time.
B kind of thing?
No, no. I mean, when I was younger, I mean, at a very young age, you don't really know what you want to get into. You don't know what you're doing. However, I think around the time that I was in maybe like middle school, going into high school, that was when I got pretty serious. I wanted to like compete at a high level. I wanted,
Mhm.
to be a part of like an academy. I wanted to actually become a coach and all that. So I think it's kind of spiraled into a more of a dream of okay, all right, this is ultimately what I want to do. And so if
Mm.
you really think about it, like I really achieved that dream early in my 20s because everything that I thought of that I was going to do, I was already doing. So
Okay. So jujitsu started more around what age for you?
I was 20 years old when I started
Okay.
training. 20, 21 years old, something like that, which nowadays is probably a little bit, I don't know. I don't think it's late even
No,
nowadays.
no, no. I don't think so at all.
But back then, it really wasn't anything around. I mean, there wasn't any jiu-jitsu around at the time. So, uh, I grew up here in Atlanta and we had literally two places in the entire state. And one was,
Wow.
the Alliance headquarters was Jacare, and another one was Eddie Camden, which was my professor all the way through black belt. And
Okay.
Eddie actually helped Jacare teach at his school. So it was very, very small and was getting built up. So, yeah, I mean, that's when I first got exposed to it, and that's when I started, which was, now 25 years ago.
That's amazing. Like I think
26, something. Yeah.
I think when I train, like our average age when people start jujitsu is like around 30, and they say,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's too late," kind of thing. But we have some kids at 16 years old, 20 years old. They're confused. They're starting it out. They're finding it super hard. But I think it's like the perfect age because
Yeah.
I tell them when you're like 25 years old or 5 years from now, you're gonna be like a monster and you'll be
Yeah.
killing everyone else who's been here for 10 years.
Yeah, I mean that's another subject because I mean we love to get like some gyms would have kids as early as like my gym we start them at 6 years old. That's the youngest we
Mm,
take. I know
okay.
some gyms will start them at 3, even
Wow.
4, and the classes are more like life skills and learning how to use the body movements and whatnot. For me, because I've been, when I was younger, I went through the stages of training, whether it's
Mhm.
jiu-jitsu or taekwondo, and all kids. It doesn't matter who. I mean, you can ask. the highest level guys out there, whether it's I think I heard the Rutola brothers talk
Yeah.
about, hey, we almost gave it up. Mikey Musumeci, like all the kids that came up very
Hmm.
young through the ranks, they had a point in their life where they're like, ah. And you know what? I mean, we're just talking about a handful of guys that made it to the top level. Imagine all the guys that didn't make it to the top level. What are they doing now? Are they still training? Probably not. So
Yeah.
I have these conversations with the different folks. And last time I spoke with Hollis Gracie, who was a good friend of mine, we talked about it. It said, okay, even as a competitor, you have maybe 10 years of
Yeah.
like prime, like 10 years to push hard, maybe.
Hmm.
And so I said, if you start them at 6 years old and push them hard from six, then they're going to stop at 16.
Hmm.
And then after that, they're probably not going to train anymore, right?
Oh yeah. Oh.
Whereas if you make it enjoyable, make it where they're training jujitsu, they're having a good time, whether it's twice a week, 3 times a week, compete if they want to. That's what I'm doing with my son now. Then, if they want to get serious, they can get serious when they're 15, 16. And some people might say, oh, it's too late. Maybe not, because you know what? They have extra 10 years until they're 25, 26 to
Hmm.
have a competitive career. And I think that's far more important than trying to push kids at such an early age and then they give it up. I would rather have people training jujitsu for the benefits of what it offers, the mat offers, rather than give up because they get burnt out of
Yeah.
training.
That's actually a topic I want to ask you because I started jiu-jitsu at 35,
Mm-hmm.
and now being 38, my son saw me witness my winning. I got second place in my first competition,
Mm-hmm.
and that inspired, I guess, my son to start jiu-jitsu. So he started around 5 years old. It's been a couple of months. He's going through it. He likes it.
Mm-hmm.
It's on and off.
Sure.
What I want to ask you is, like, I spoke to my coach about it. He doesn't always spar all the time. He still cries on and off. He's gonna be sick soon, but like I see that he's enjoying it. It's like it's hard to explain. He likes it and hates it at the same time because sometimes he says, I got a stripe today, and the other days like he was crying. It's like, what do you do in a situation like with kids who don't want to spar? Is that normal that they don't want to spar and you give them that
I think
space
that's all
or
normal. I mean, I know adults that don't want to spar sometimes. They get on the mat and sometimes they're nervous about, going, on live rounds. Um, Fortunately, I don't have to deal with that for my son, but I've been in the business a long time where I have dealt with different kids, right?
Mhm.
For my son, it's what he's used to. He's literally was brought up on the mats. Ever since he was crawling, he was on the mats. So the only thing he knows, the only thing he sees is people rolling. It's just part of his, growth. That's what he sees. That's what he does. Like there's no not even questions about it. Like that's basically what that's his life. It's like when you're brought up in a very prosperous home and your parents are driving Lamborghinis and that's the only thing you know. That's the only thing you know. And
Yeah.
for my son, that's the only thing he knows. However, like other kids, I have seen that. I have seen where kids are, and so I think a couple things you can do. One is actually to let them know. I mean, you have to educate them on why you want them to do this, right?
Mhm.
And of course, at that young age, it's difficult to say, well, you have to do it for self defense. You have to do it for this. You have to do it for that. But
Yeah.
you have to make lessons. You have to compare life lessons to why they're doing what they're doing. Okay, when you're going against, so and so, it's hard, man. He takes you down. Maybe you hit your back or your head on the mat. It may hurt. It's hard. You can't breathe. Like he's smothering you. You're in this position where, like, just what we feel, the kids feel the same thing, right? So now, how do we send a message like, why are you doing this? Then there's something like you can say something to the point where it's like, what you're learning is you're learning how to deal with yourself when you get
Mhm.
put into a situation, because as you start to get older, you're going to be in a position where not necessarily physically, but you're going to be in a position where you don't like it. Do you want to quit every time you get to a point where you don't like it? Oh, school's too hard. I'm going to quit. I don't want to do this.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're basically teaching them the discipline to do stuff that they don't want to do, because they will get to a point in life where, I mean, every day we go through that, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Even as adults. I mean, I love going to work because I teach jujitsu and I get to travel the world and I get to hang out with, people that I love. I have a lot of people who may wake up and say, I don't want to go to work today. I don't want to deal with the stress, but they end up going anyways, right? And so I think it's if we teach them the discipline, like the definition of discipline, doing something even when you don't want to do it, you're letting them know, hey, life is hard. You're going to end up in situations where, hey, they may tap you, that you may get into a position where you feel so uncomfortable, you may have to tap, but like, we're not giving up. We're tapping, we're restarting. We continue to do it until we get comfortable in these positions, right? So I think if you compare life lessons to what they're doing on the mats, I think that works out really well. And another thing is not to push them so hard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Again, I briefly touched on that, but parents tend to want to push their kids so much. Like even myself, I don't teach the kids classes, and with his instructor, professor teaching, I don't. Like a lot of people, like parents want to coach on the side or do this, do that. No, don't do that.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's very common. I myself, I don't even look at him. I don't even look at that class because I don't want him depending on me. I don't want him keep looking over his shoulder. I don't want him to perform for me. I want him
Yeah.
to train for himself. So there's no dependency on me. Like I don't do it afterwards. He's like, sometimes he'll ask, did you see that? I'm like, no, what happened? He's like, oh, this, that. And whether it's good or bad, I'm like, oh, good job. Give him a high five. Yeah, cool. Yeah. All right, cool.
That's it.
And then that's it. And so he knows on the days that he's got to go, he puts his gi on, his no gi stuff, and he's ready to go. That's it. There's no questions. And now he's developed some friends in the classroom. So like sometimes after class, my wife will take him like this. Yesterday, actually, a couple of the kids came over. They were swimming. They were eating pizza. They were having a good time. So now, jiu-jitsu and training equates to this fun activity, right?
Yeah.
Not something that your parents are making you do.
Oh,
So,
true. 100%. Like my son now, we say, Monday's boxing and we do one boxing, one jiu-jitsu a week. It's easy for him with school and everything. And it's just, he's accustomed to it. He just goes now. He understands. And I agree with you on something with, I tried to coach one time in the beginning. I put on my gi, and I'm a no gi guy, but I put on my gi. I'm like, okay, I'll do it for him. But I noticed something. As soon as I got on the mat with him and he got stuck, he was like searching for, he was like crying for my name. And
I mean, listen, we're providers. Like kids look at us as a savior, right?
Exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
They want us. So when you're out of the picture, they got to figure it out. Like, okay, I need to get out of this bad position, or I need to deal with this pressure, whatever the situation they're in. They got to deal with it. They're not dependent on you or a coach or whoever else to be there for them, right? So we teach them dependency, independence.
Yeah, for sure. That was the one time, the only time I actually helped coaching, and then I just like stood on the sidelines. Once in a while, I look at him, thumbs up, and that's at the end of class. I try and like reassure him and tell him that you did a good job. Oh, you learned a break fall. You did great on break fall. It doesn't matter if you got choked out or whatever, like scared. Good break falling today. Let's focus on the positives that he had today. So
yeah, I do. Sometimes my son will come up and he'll say, "Oh man, I did the double leg. Well, I did this." He has good rolls and bad rolls. Sometimes it's like, "Well, but I got arm bar, or I got tapped or whatever." Sometimes what I tell him is like, "I did too." He's like, "Really?" I'm like, yeah. He's like, "Oh, you got choked, you got arm bar too." I'm like, "Yeah, of course, every day." I said, "That's how you learn, buddy." And he's like, "Oh," and now a light bulb goes off. It's like, it's okay, like it's okay to lose. You know what I'm saying? Like we teach, we enforce this rule where it's like you cannot lose. Why did you get arm bar? Do this next time, that next time, right? And so now they're like, oh man, and they don't want to be put in that situation. So now they start straying away from training. They start straying away from and so I share all of that with my son. Like, it's okay to lose, man. It's okay to lose that position. I'm like, but did you give up? He's like, no. I'm like, good. That's the lesson that I want you to learn from it. Like, it was hard. You were in a position where you felt uncomfortable, but you didn't give up. You kept going. And he's like, yeah. And then I passed this guard. I'm like, yeah, great. See, And so I think it's just how you really spin it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also like the kids pushing through it, I find it could also be super hard on the parents to watch their kids be exposed to that. Because I brought my wife one time to she doesn't come to jiu-jitsu. She only comes to boxing now because boxing is more like exercise. There's no hitting with kids, obviously. Yeah. But the one time she came, I thought she was gonna cry, and my son was like, "Oh." My son told me the next day, "I want to quit jiu-jitsu," but I imagine talk to him like you can't quit in life. School's hard, everything's hard. Papa has a hard job, all this stuff. But it was shock to my wife. My wife told me, "You make him come here, you bring him, but I can't come watch this." I'm like, "Okay, cool, deal." And he's been doing it a couple months now, so he's still white belt force strength.
The training, we actually started him even though our program starts at 6, I kind of broke the rule and we started him at 4. But
Mm,
the professor teaching our program, she agreed that he was ready because we even have 6 year olds that sometimes we don't take. Like a lot of schools would be like, yeah, we want the students. We let them try a class, and if we feel like they're not ready for our program, they're not mature, or they're just not ready for the program, we don't accept them. Right? They need to be
yeah.
able to listen. They need to be able to pay attention, take directions, and not run to mom or dad every time they need something. So if they can meet those criteria and they're able, then we accept them. But anyway, my son started at 4. He'll be 8 here in
Wow, that's amazing.
couple of months, right? And so 4 years, and
Of
he's
knowledge.
literally 4 years, and he's gotten 2 belts. He's now a gray white belt, or a gray belt.
Mm,
Sorry, so he went from white belt to gray black. Now he's a gray black. Now he's a gray belt. So in 4 years, he's gotten 2 belts.
that's amazing push for the kid. I find like because I learned this through my son. Like I didn't know how many belts there were in the kids programs, and like
So
oh my god, it's a
yeah,
lot.
it's good because if you look, let's say they start at 6
Hmm.
and they can't get adult ranking until they're 16.
Yes,
So that's 10 years. If an average person trained 10 years, they'll be a black belt.
yes, they're pre-black belt technically. That's
So,
insane.
when kids train that long and consistently, by the time they're 16, yeah, they're getting their blue belts. But technically, at 16, 17, they're purple, brown, even black belts, right?
For
But
sure.
since there's age limits on what ranking you can get. So at 16 and then 17, they're a purple belt already. And then 18, 19, they're already a black belt. And they've already got 13, 14, almost 15 years under their belt, right? And
Yeah.
so you see a lot of juvenile blue belts that are, I mean, right there with all the purple, brown, and black belts because, man, they spent a lot of time within that period, like, over a decade training.
Yeah. And also, I was noticing that with all these belts and stripes they're getting, obviously, you'll get more stripes faster compared to an adult because you start a white and there's fewer belts. It's more reassuring. Like every time they get a stripe, it's like it reassures them, oh, I achieved this much.
Yeah.
And so it's my son, well, right now he's always expecting a stripe, but I'm trying to explain to him it doesn't work that way. Like you get a stripe when you earn it,
Yeah.
but it like motivates him slightly, that stripe.
Sure.
So,
I mean, like you gotta like. I always compare like stripes to the school system, right?
mhm,
You say, okay, ultimately, you're not trying to get to the next semester. You're not trying to go from first grade to second grade. I mean, yes, you are, but ultimately, what do you want to do? You want to graduate from high school. You want to go 12 grades, and
yeah.
then you can graduate, and then you can decide, like, hey, do I want to go to college and whatnot, right? But anyways, the basic is 12.
Mhm.
So the stripes are stripes and the belts are basically in between. Like, okay,
Okay.
your first 5, let's say it's blue belt and your stripes. And 6th, 7th, 8th grade is your purple belt. And
Yeah.
then your, 9th through 12th grade is your brown and black belt. And then in between are all your stripes. And so you're giving them a goal. Like, what's your ultimate goal? Your ultimate goal should be to graduate high school at 12,
Yeah.
right? Not, oh, I got to 2nd grade. I'm good. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way. And if you tell parents, listen, this is education. And they're like, huh, at first they may be confused, but it's education. You're teaching them life lessons. You're teaching them a lot of life lessons. You're teaching them how to work with each other. You teach them the discipline. You're teaching people how to show respect. These kids are learning more than just jujitsu. Jujitsu is basically a big metaphor for life. Like you're teaching them
Mhm.
so, and especially if you're at a good academy with a great leader, like they're gonna learn so much about themselves and about life on those mats, especially to spend a few years on there, right? And
Oh,
so, you know,
100%. I find like all kids, like you were saying in the beginning, like some kids might not be ready for jujitsu. And I find like my son, part of me knew like he's a very soft, very shy individual. And I knew maybe he'll be ready more around 6, 7, 8 years old. And I didn't mind. But he wants to start that age because whatever happened, I won a medal and this and that, and he wants to start. But that being said, a few months, it was hard to watch. I was like dying on the inside because like, seeing your son get hurt, and I'm not used to it. I don't mind getting hurt or full mounted or lose, but see your son. But that being said, him pushing through it, you see these little improvements in like his little
mhm.
day to day. Whereas like He's more energetic. He comes out of his shell. He can speak well. He has more confidence in himself when playing even with friends. He used to be stuck in this little shell of his, but
Yeah.
now the shell is cracked open a bit. So it's kind of
Yeah.
cool to see that.
Self esteem takes him a
Yeah,
long way in life. That's what we're trying to teach him, you know?
yeah. It's true. It's just it's nice to see. And I told my wife like that one time she came, I tried to explain to her like, don't worry, it's an investment with him. Like he's gonna. It's not about being a world champion. It's about just like building his character and just like give him better tools when he's like in high school or whatever. Like what to do if he gets confronted one day. That was my main goal. It's like for him to protect himself if needed in the future.
Yep.
That's all.
And you know, like you just said, it's an investment. When parents, you know, a lot of times parents will call in and be like, first question they ask, like, well, how much is it? How much is class? How much is it? Well, first of all, you don't know who we are. You don't know how often we train. You don't know anything, any details about the program, and the only thing. And I understand, like, we all want to know, like, budget, what it
Yeah,
costs
for sure.
to get our kids involved into an extracurricular activity, or you know, after school program, whatever it may be. However, I always tell them, I said, well, how important is this? Like, what are you trying to get out of this, right?
Mhm.
I'm like, well, you know, he's just so wild. I want him to get good. Well, as how much is that worth to you? Well, like, I mean, obviously it's a lot. I'm like, well, okay, then you're going to go ahead and basically choose a program that's cheap because you can afford it, not knowing that it's an investment. Like, and then they start to think about it. Like, you're right. I'm like, yes, it is an investment. Like if you had a choice to send them to, you know, MIT and your local school, and you know, and you could possibly outweigh the difference, and you're like, okay, I want to send them here. It's an investment. You'll do anything to send them to a nicer school, right? And so when you really break down why and how we help kids, their attitude changes, you know. And that's why we have a very successful kids program because parents know, and then they start to see the other kids, and they start to see what we're all about. And like, man, it is an investment. I mean, in all of us.
Oh, for sure. And I try to help people like financially within a joke. It's like, well, we all just need to spend a little bit less on Amazon, a few more Starbucks. You know, you don't need the fanciest car. You can just cut off Netflix. I don't know. There's ways to cut the corners and
Yeah,
really
it's
invest.
priorities. You know, it's priorities. I have students that, you know, it's kind of funny to say this. I have students that, you know, have the nicest cars, I mean, nicest jewelry, and then every time their tuition comes up, they don't have money in the bank. It bounces. You know what I mean? So it's
True.
priorities. And then I have people that are working part-time jobs or working two jobs that probably really couldn't afford to train jiu-jitsu, but they know that this is the best thing they could do because it helps them out. They do whatever means to make that, and they're
Yeah.
on time, and then they pay and they train, right? And so it really, whatever your priority is, you know, if your priority is, let's say, playing guitar, you're going to invest all your time and money and your efforts into playing guitar. If your priority is whatever it may be, that's what you're going to do. And so if you know the importance of physical health, mental health, and community growth, jiu-jitsu is going to be one of the best exercises or group therapy that you can have while you're having a good time. Until they realize that, sometimes you just can't convince them. And
No, for
some may
sure.
try it, and some may get frustrated and just give up because they're not getting the immediate gratification that you're used to getting. You know, like click of a button, you're getting this, doing this.
Yeah.
You know, jiu-jitsu is not easy. It's not easy at all. So some people just stray away from that because they're like, yeah, I don't have the time anymore. Well, it's all relevant to if you can make time for it. We don't have time. We don't have a lot of time, but you really have to make time for it, you know?
Oh, for sure. Even I tell people like when they ask me stuff like how long does it take to get good in jiu-jitsu? I'm like, well, let's say maybe 2 years, you'll start understanding the basics. But like I try to say it's not about like you invest yourself. Like you can go once a week, go once a week. It's more than 0 times a week kind of thing. So that's where people like kind of get fooled by it. They think they have to go every day, or they expect to get super good in 3 months or less kind of thing. They expect that they're
And
shredded.
the problem is a lot of people don't know why they're getting into jiu-jitsu. Like,
Hmm.
I think you got, you know, the first questions that I ask potential students is why and what's your goal? What's your ultimate goal?
Yeah.
Why are you getting into this? Most people actually don't know. I mean, you have a select few that may say, I want to compete. some younger guys that may have wrestled this and that. Great, we can help you do that. But most people, I would say over 90% of people that are looking to train say, well, I'm looking to just do something. Like I need to do something for myself.
Yeah, for sure. So, Ken,
I want to learn how to, defend myself. I want to get in better shape, but the gym's a little bit more boring.
mm,
Then you have to break down their goals. Be like, okay, well, realistically, how many hours can you invest in a week? Oh man, I can do this every day. I'm like, no, 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 no. Okay, let's rephrase that. How many hours a week can you invest in this for the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months without making, compromising your time with your family,
mhm,
your job, with your kids, with other social activities that you may have, right?
yeah,
Uh, and then they're like, okay, so I always tell my beginner students, let's start you off with twice a week or 3 times a week, maybe even every other day. First, your body has to get used to these movements. Let's start you off, well, when do I get to roll? And then another question I ask him is like, okay, do you know the rules? Like, okay, if you wanted to play basketball, you would need to know the rules, right? They're like, yeah. Well, how much is a basket? 2 points, 3 points. Okay, how do you foul? Like, you have to know the rules to play basketball. Do you know the rules of jiu-jitsu when you roll? Well, see, you can't play it. You can't roll it because if you don't know the rules, that's how you're gonna hurt yourself, and that's how you're gonna hurt the other person. Like once, sometimes I'm like, I got to the mount, but I just don't know what to do. Like, well, that means you're not ready. Why don't we do some positional training from the mounted position so you know what to do, and then we can start putting all things, and then it starts making sense for people, right? So I think if you really break it down to people on. It's a lot easier for them to understand and break down their goals and why they want to start training, and you help them achieve their goals, not our goals. Like we want the best jiu-jitsu student. I want you to get to blue belt. I want you to be better at this. But I think if we break down and really listen and break down what they're looking for, because
yeah.
a 20-year-old kid coming in and a 45-year-old man coming in, two different goals, right? The 45-year-old man comes in after work, he wants to de-stress a little bit. He doesn't want to come in and get stressed out from class. He wants to de-stress. He wants to have a good time. He wants to relieve a little bit and go home and be with his family and, be himself, right? Whereas a 20-year-old may want to come in and be like, man, I want to roll through everybody. I want to get top. So, and like, we just need to be able to cater to everyone's goals,
Yeah, for sure. But now that you're helping out a student, young kids, and people over 30 and 40, before you started your own academy, were you, because you spoke about competition, did you do a lot of competitions in your 20s before?
I,
And
I,
do you also now, do competitions?
So I competed a lot. I mean, I wouldn't say I competed like some guys compete every weekend, And again, that takes a lot too because it takes time, it takes money.
Yeah.
I competed a good amount. Again, not as much as some of these other guys have, but I did. And I competed till about 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, I had a full ACL reconstructive surgery. And so ever since then, I mean, probably about a year ago, I started training again, hard again. And so, okay. But I'm at a point in my life where I've been there, I've done it. I don't have I get the itch sometimes, but I don't really have the desire to compete anymore. Like it's kind of in the back. I'm like, I love helping my guys. I love training with them. I love pushing, but I just don't have that hunger of like, man, I want to go out there. Maybe because I have all the things that I need, like what else? Like, does winning a big a tournament make a change for me right now? No. I mean, maybe for my personal selfish reasons, but those times that I can invest in training and doing other stuff, now I want to be able to spend with my son. I want to be able to spend expanding my business. I want to spend doing other activities and other things, right? Because all my life I've been training. I've been invested uh, in jiu-jitsu and in the gym business. So now I'm just at a point, like, I'm not saying I may not ever do it again, but I'm at a
Mm-hmm.
point where it's kind of like, I love training. I still train probably, 3, 4 times a week with my guys. And, but yeah, I just, and injuries take a toll on your body as you get older too. It's
Yeah.
harder and harder to recover. I'm 46. I'll be 47 here soon, and like my fingers, my shoulders, every day it's a little something. And if people that's been in the business a long time, in the sport a long time, everybody has little knick-knack injuries, even big injuries that they've had to deal with. So I want to preserve myself per se for the later on years of my life.
And since you've been doing jiu-jitsu for about over 25 years, fair to say,
Yeah, around there, around it.
how do you find jiu-jitsu compared to then to now, like where it is right now? Like in terms of like more people doing it. I find it's
Oh yeah,
like
it's so many more people doing it because I don't know. Again, it's kind of conflicting because I almost felt like back then I had something that nobody else had. Like, even as even a black belt for sure, but even before black belt, like I knew something that like nobody else even heard of. Like it was like this, almost like this superpower, I guess.
yeah.
And I'm happy that it's exposed now. Everybody's training, especially for, I guess, for my business, having a lot of people come in and train with me. I think there's a shift in the focus of training. Back then, I think majority of our training was more realistic to like a street fight, I guess, or
Okay.
MMA.
Mm-hmm.
Like our focus wasn't to really like, oh man, we just want to score this point. We want to get to this position. Like it was more like, okay, how do I get the finish? Like we were always just hunting for submissions, and then like our no-gi class will be. It wasn't a class. There's never a no-gi class. During training, everybody would just take their gi tops off and be like, all right, let's do no-gi, and it'd be gi pants, nothing on top.
Hybrid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then we would literally like use slaps to open people up, and so training was a little bit different. I think the change is needed in order for it to get to the stage it is now. Like obviously you couldn't do that with kids. And I think there's some divisions now. Like, well, what are you training jiu-jitsu? Well, oh, this is a sport like competition school. This is a self-defense school. This is whatever. Like now there's some divisions where people, I guess, can kind of choose what they want to do, right? Now, some people are saying that takes the essence away from true jiu-jitsu, and some people are saying, no, this is the direction it's supposed to go on. I think growth is good, and with any kind of growth, there's gonna be some, trouble that comes along with growth.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having your kid. As they grow, by the time they get to their teenage years, they're gonna give you a little trouble. They're gonna give you a little pushback. There's always something that you have to deal with. And I think jiu-jitsu is going through the same thing right now. I mean, it's the popularity of jiu-jitsu is just exploding, right? We are going through this shift of like, oh, does jiu-jitsu work for self-defense? Does jiu-jitsu, how do you need to train jiu-jitsu in order for you to achieve this and that? I think those are all valid points, but my ultimate goal, and one of the reasons I started Matt Made, and one of the big focuses that I have on jiu-jitsu right now is we talked about being a competitor, but I'm at a point in my life where I'm a proponent and an advocate for jiu-jitsu. Like I want to take this thing just as like, CJI, they get athletes paid,
Yeah.
to more people. That's my goal, but in a different way, right? My goal is to show people the true essence of like how it's changing people's lives through the mats, rather than just showing them, okay, you can be this great competitor. Because a lot of times when we're watching these big shows, most guys that are, even in their 30s are going to watch, and they may be fans, but they're never going to be like, I want to do that. or they want to do it, but they're like, no, I don't want to be in a position like that, man. That looks hard, right?
Yeah.
So the focus is a little bit different. Like I want people to be able to see the Matt made stories, and then the docu series that we have. I want them to be able to see that and be like, oh my god, that guy with PTSD. Oh, that woman that was overweight. That
Yeah.
sounds like me. That's me. I want them to be inspired by those stories. I want them to be able to take that and say, I want to start training jiu-jitsu for those reasons.
Yeah.
And along the way, if their goals change, then I want to be a world champion. Go for it. But how do we get them in the door? How do we share this beautiful art to the masses?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. And that's like a part of why I started like this podcast too, is like, I'll be honest, I saw a highlight from one of your shows. I'm not going to say her name, but the story was her
Yeah.
son was murdered
Yeah.
and how jujitsu helped her. I showed
Yeah,
my wife
that's
this. Yeah, I got goosebumps, man. I got goosebumps. I showed this to my wife. She was crying. I was destroyed inside. Like, but these are stories that are like hard to hear, but
Yeah.
so amazing about perseverance and like
Mhm.
the struggle and like how she got through and where she is now. It's like, wow, these are like, and it can relate with other people because people can go through the same struggle, and
Yeah.
how jujitsu just like is
Sure.
there for you. That's
There's
amazing.
so many stories.
Stories, yeah.
And that's the crazy thing. Like you guys can actually, audience can actually go to mattmade.com and they can watch the stories, and they're all divided into different categories.
Seriously.
Which is kind of cool now. So you can go in there. You'll have like PTSD, and then it'll have all the videos. So you can click and see all the different videos. Speaking of that, I'll be flying out to Vegas next week for the Master Worlds and Jiu-Jitsu Con,
Mhm.
where I'll be collecting more stories. So if you guys are out there, you're listening, make sure you find me and my cameraman, and then share your stories. And we're also still working on getting the docu series. We have season 1 free on YouTube. You guys can check out Matt Made, but we're also, it's trying to get it into the big pictures and with the network. So we're still trying to deal with that. So it's a lot of work, but that's what I'm working towards next. So, but yeah, man, that's where we are.
That's awesome to hear. And we talked about, you just mentioned CJ, because that was going to be one of my next questions. I want to know, like, I'm mixed feelings about CJ and ADCC. I want to know what do you like? Did you watch a little bit of CGI and ADCC?
I actually I watched all of it, which man, first night I stayed up too late. I'm still trying to get sleep.
Yeah, I feel you.
Times like 9:30, and I stayed up way too late watching. And right before we got on, I was watching the finals of the ADCCs too.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's great for the sport. Both. I mean, I'm not like. I just thought we had a great weekend of jiu-jitsu. Like,
yeah, seriously.
There's a lot of people like comparing the two. It's like, well, that's unnecessary. There's no reason to compare the two different organizations that are hosting. Okay, now I know CJI was, gunning towards ADCC, kind of mocking them, and I don't see a reason for it. Me personally, I just think it was a great event, and the rule set. I like the pit or the alley. I like the rule set. The athletes went after it. The crowd was great. The prize money for the fighters were amazing. Only thing that I didn't like about the CJI, if I have any thing to criticize them for, was some of the, and I should almost say R-rated, X-rated, comments, and like Renato Laranja, he's a character.
Yeah, let's say that.
I think he was funny, but it was a little too much of him, making creepy statements.
Yeah, I feel you.
Dropping F-bombs. Like, if you want the sport to grow and people, like non-jiu-jitsu people, to watch, and they tune in, let's say, a woman tunes in with her daughter, or even me, with my son, next thing you hear is like this. I don't know that I would be a big fan of that, right? So, but if that's the angle, I myself can't support or watch any further if it goes down that route. You know what I mean? It's just like mockery and just, comedy. I thought Craig was funny coming out in those little Speedos. Like,
it's amazing.
Right. Now, it's still, I truly believe, jiu-jitsu is a martial art. And so there's still some um, dignity, and
Hmm.
there's this unspoken rule of like how a person should, be represented and act. Like on the other side, like with ADCCs, they blow up these athletes. Now, maybe they're not getting paid, but it's not. I mean, is it all about money? I don't know. You know, but
Hmm.
they come in, they're bound, they're just showing respect. Like maybe that's the spectacle that we want to show the next generation to watch, right? I thoroughly enjoyed both events, though. I really, first of all, like, who am I to criticize these events, right? They're both growing jujitsu. They're putting out great shows.
Hmm.
I really enjoyed actually all of them. You can't blame the athletes. You can't,
No.
they're out there just doing what they love and doing their job, right?
Oh, for
Um,
sure. And this was the first time that I completely, Kenny, forgot that UFC was even on.
yeah,
CGI just finished. I'm like, oh, I guess I'll go to bed now. Wait, the
yeah.
last event for Adesanya's fighting. Like, sure, I'll watch it. I had no idea UFC was on. That's how good Jiu-Jitsu was this week.
Yeah, it was good. And I think the fact that it was not behind a paywall
Mm, yeah,
made a lot of people watch. And I think it was like 120,000 people streaming on YouTube.
mm,
Now, it's good for us viewers, right? But how long can an organization last without making a profit, right? And
yeah,
so that becomes a problem because a lot of shows have come and gone, right? A
yeah.
lot of shows
True.
have gone. And that's because at the end of the day, no matter who your investor is, like let's say I have $100 million that I can spend. Year after year, here's 2 million, here's 4 million. We don't make any profit. I keep shelling out money. At a
Yeah.
certain point, there's gonna be like, okay, pump the brakes. This is it. I cannot. I don't want to put any more money into this. Like, what is my ROI? What is my return on investment?
Yes.
Maybe it's just love for the sport. Great. Maybe Mark Zuckerberg comes in and says, but whatever, and great. That's great for the sport, right? But how long can this organization? And I hope, and I certainly hope that CJI sticks around for a long time
Yes.
to provide this platform for athletes and sponsors and whatnot to make a living off of jiu-jitsu, right? But I seriously don't know how they can have this free site, free everything, and
Yeah.
it's not that expensive either. And they're paying out, I mean, 2 million plus 10,000 just to show. I mean, I would say $4 or $5 million to put that show on. That's a lot of money, and no matter how rich you are,
Yeah.
I don't know that you want to be shelling out that kind of money
That's
every.
why I was thinking about it. I'm pretty sure, like, because he already Craig Jones announced already for 2025. Okay, he has another year. Great. But if there was a purpose, a goal to all of this, I think it's just he wants to maybe in the end just have ADCC slightly increase pay raise, and that's it. Because like you said, I don't think CGI can continue for 5 or 10 years. It's a big investment with
Yeah.
no return.
Yeah,
So
I mean, unless let's say a big major corporation, like let's say Nike, got involved and said, you know what?
expensive.
I mean, for them, that's nothing. But imagine if Nike is sponsored by Nike. You know what I mean? Then it may be possible, right? But again, it really depends on who's able to see it and who's able to see the possibility of the growth, right? And so, if none of these major companies have their hand in almost the fastest growing sport, then maybe they want to, right? And
Probably.
so I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't know how it's going to end up. I hope it's going to be good because the more organizations pop up, the more athletes they're going to produce, and the
Hmm.
better quality athletes, the more for the viewers and more for jiu-jitsu gyms because they want to start training to see, like, I think it just does a lot for the sport.
You made me think of imagine Nike being an investor. Jiu-jitsu, just do it, kind of thing. That'll be amazing for them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, imagine Nike starts pumping out like gis and stuff,
Oh,
But one of the things Shoiro, when they first came out, their slogan was like um, "Rebels without." I don't know. It was something about like their very own niche, like We're not
Mm-hmm.
the sellout company, big company, but they're the biggest company out there,
Yep.
charging the biggest money, right? And
Yep.
so again, what are they going to do? They're going to go back to being a mom and pop store selling gis out of no, they got waiting lists, selling these gis before they even come out. Like, but imagine if Nike came out, Adidas came out, these companies came out and invested and said, we want part of this. Well, actually, Adidas and Nike, they both have gis and judo and taekwondo already.
Yep.
They're already invested in
Flip.
that.
Yeah.
Right. But imagine if they had it with jiu-jitsu, and they knew what they were getting into. It could be big. I mean, it could be a big opportunity for, maybe not like IBJJF, but maybe for, like CJI. I mean,
Exactly.
they say we want to put in $5 million to put Nike all over it, and our athletes wear Nike, rash guards and shorts. Man, imagine all the commercials they run, and that would just blow up the sport.
Yeah.
And so the possibilities are endless, I think. And it's
For sure.
all for the better. It's all, at the end of the day, people can, like, every organization could use a little critiquing. And that depends on who's watching, right?
Yes.
Some people may love the format. Some people will be like, that's great, nothing to change. Some people, there's always going to be, like, even at my academy, I'm sure there's going to be people like, oh, no, Kenny needs to do it like this. They need to do it. They don't do this. They do this. You can never be perfect, right? There's always going to be critiquing, right? My thought and my goals is to grow the sport of jiu-jitsu. And so I'm a big fan of all of it. Long as, like, only organization or format that I don't condone is the the high rollers.
High rollers.
It's where guys smoke big blunts before they.
Oh.
I mean, look, I don't care that you smoke, you drink, but I still see martial arts in a very martial way. There's, you wouldn't do that. I mean, I would never let anybody smoke on the mats at my gym, right? Like, just, I don't know that those two can kind of be married together. You know what I mean? Like, you can do that on your free time, but we're not gonna a mockery of the martial arts. Like, it's so when the sport goes in that direction, I'm just not a big fan of it. Like, again, who am I to say it? But I just won't be supporting that event. I think I had a invitation a couple years back, and they were like, "Hey, we would love to have you down here do some interviews," and and I kindly, declined because it just didn't go with what I believe in.
Even right? For sure, I can respect that.
Even the show, like, one of the things that we're trying to get it into the major networks, and being in Hollywood, man, it's a rough business, and they try to always, like, manipulate you and try to change the format, but like, we had to step back and be like, look, this is my intention, this is where my heart is. I'm not gonna stray away from the actual idea and what the show represents just to get it on.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of where we are with that too.
That's good. But it's clear to say that jiu-jitsu has been changing. And before we end the show, Kenny, I want to ask you if there was any advice you would give to someone thinking about jiu-jitsu or martial arts, or just they want to start. What would that advice be to them?
I think I briefly talked about it earlier, right? I think you have to have a clear goal, a clear expectation of what your expectations are, right? Yes, it's good to just jump in, okay? But, like, what are your ultimate goals? And it may be hard to think about that right off the bat, but if you clearly know what you want to get into, why you want to get into this, then I think you'll have a better chance of sticking around for a longer time. Now, again, it may not be right away, because sometimes you don't know until you're actually on the mats. Then you start to learn all these lessons, right? But being realistic with yourself. Like, again, if you're 35 years old coming in, don't expect to become a black belt world champion in 5 years. That's not going to happen, right? It's probably not going to happen. at the adult level, anyways, at that age.
Hmm.
So if you have a very clear expectation of like what you're capable of doing, what you want out of
Hmm.
this, I think they're gonna have a very good time training jujitsu. Like, and don't expect too much out of yourself. Don't expect to go in there and be dominant and I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. No, go in there with an open mind. Go in there with the sense of community, sense of learning, and get the best out of the experience.
Yes, I agree with that. Go in there, don't see red. No, just see love in there. The different type of red, not the red pain, the red love, because
The heart and
that's
love.
that's the one we want to see. Because that was something I learned from jiu-jitsu that was completely new to me. This brothership, this hoodship, this family that was amazing. The biggest thing about jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
So Kenny, I want to say thank you again for coming back on my show, even though the technical difficulties was on my end. But thank you again for coming on. It was a great talk. And guys, you can follow Kenny on Instagram. You can have a look at his Mat Mate show as well. Amazing stories. You guys have to see some really you can impact your life. You can, it's just great stuff. So Kenny, honestly, thank you again for coming on.
Thanks for having me on. And guys, if you guys are watching this, listening to this, I'm going to be in Vegas August 30th all the way to September 1st, which is the time they're having Master Worlds and Jiu Jitsu Con. I'm going to be walking around. I got a couple of students that I'm coaching, but I'm going to be walking around and I'm going to have a shirt on that says, "Tell me your mat mate story."
Nice.
Stop me and make sure you guys share your jiu-jitsu story with me so we can share it with the community.
That is awesome. Thank you again, Kenny. All right, Jiu Jitsu nerds, have a good one. Have a great week. Os.